2,500 years have passed, yet one name is still remembered as a symbol of power, ambition, and conquest: Alexander the Great, a conqueror who, in his short life, changed the map of the world. After ascending the throne at the age of 20, within just a few years, Alexander's empire stretched from Greece to Egypt, Persia, and India. In an era when communication was slow, maps were incomplete, and travel took months or even years, Alexander had built history's greatest empire. He created a unique cocktail of Greek philosophy, Persian administration, and Eastern traditions that left the world in awe. How did Alexander achieve all this? Was he truly great, or merely an ambitious young king who, despite conquering everything, could not conquer himself? Let's find out in today's video. Alexander was born in 356 BC in Pella, the capital of ancient Macedonia, part of ancient Greece. Alexander's father was Philip II, king of Macedon, and his mother was Olympias, one of Philip's 7 wives. As a prince, Alexander enjoyed all the privileges bestowed upon a king's son. In his book, The Life of Alexander, Plutarch writes that private tutors were appointed for Alexander's education. One of them was Leonidas, a relative of Philip. Leonidas was a strict teacher who relentlessly trained Alexander in combat, horse riding, and military tactics. A few years later, another tutor named Lysimachus was appointed, who trained Alexander in music and poetry and taught him to read and write. When Alexander was just 10 years old, a trader brought a horse to his father. However, no one could control the horse, and Philip was about to refuse the trader when Alexander stepped forward and claimed he could tame it. Surprised and curious, Philip gave Alexander permission. Alexander approached the horse, spoke to it gently, soothed it, and then calmly mounted and rode it. Impressed, Philip told him, "My son, seek a kingdom worthy of yourself, for Macedonia is too small for you." He then bought the horse and named it Bucephalus, the very horse Alexander would ride to countless victories. When Alexander turned 13, his training reached a new level. Philip hired Aristotle, considered one of history's greatest philosophers. Aristotle gave daily lessons to Alexander at the Temple of the Nymphs in Mysa. Here, Alexander studied alongside other royal children, many of whom became his close friends and future generals. Aristotle taught him religion, art, logic, and philosophy. So impressed was King Philip with this training that he rebuilt Aristotle's hometown, Stagira, which had been destroyed in a war, and freed all its slaves. Alexander's first challenge was when he was just 16. King Philip declared war on the kingdom of Byzantium and was leading an army into battle, leaving Macedonia in Alexander's charge. This was a great responsibility, and some saw an opportunity. The Thracian Mighty, a European tribe, rebelled against Macedonia, thinking the kingdom under a 16-year-old was weak. They soon faced the consequences of underestimating Alexander. He sent an army, drove them out of their territories, settled other Greek citizens there, and named it Alexandropolis. When King Philip returned and saw how Alexander had handled the revolt, he was greatly impressed. He then allotted Alexander his own small army and tasked him with handling potential future revolts in the kingdom. For the next 3 years, Alexander joined his father in military campaigns. They first conquered the kingdoms of Elatea and Amphissa, then faced the armies of Athens and Thebes at Chaeronea, the Battle of Chaeronea. Philip commanded the right wing, while Alexander led the left wing excellently, securing victory and bringing most of Greece under Philip's control. After securing Greece, Philip set his sights on the Persian Empire. Again, he left Alexander in charge of the kingdom while he campaigned. Once again, Alexander handled this responsibility well. When Philip returned, he decided to marry again. His new wife was Cleopatra Eurydice. This marriage threatened Alexander's dream of becoming the next king, since Cleopatra was a pure Macedonian, whereas Alexander was only half Macedonian, since his mother wasn't from Macedonia. This meant if Cleopatra had a son, he would become the successor before Alexander. According to Plutarch, during the wedding, Cleopatra's uncle Attalus raised a glass and wished that Cleopatra would soon have a son so that Macedonia could have a true Macedonian king. Enraged, Alexander threw his cup at Attalus and shouted, "You villain! What am I then?" Seeing his father remain silent, Alexander was so hurt that he left with his mother to Epirus, where his uncle, King Alexander, lived. Meanwhile, in Macedonia, King Philip had a son with Cleopatra, but he was deeply saddened by Alexander's departure. In truth, Philip did not want to remove Alexander from his position as successor. He eventually sent messages persuading Alexander to return, and Alexander obeyed. However, their old equation was never restored. Later, Philip arranged the marriage of his daughter, also named Cleopatra, to Alexander's uncle and his own brother-in-law, the king of Epirus. On the wedding day, as King Philip entered the theater, one of his bodyguards suddenly stabbed him, causing his death on the spot. There are conflicting sources regarding the reason for this assassination. According to the historian Diodorus, the bodyguard was named Pausanias of Orestes, who had been exploited by Attalus's men and wanted King Philip to punish them. When justice wasn't served, he took this extreme step. After King Philip's death, Alexander was declared king of Macedon. Shocked by his father's death, Alexander knew that if he didn't make harsh decisions, his own life could be in danger. He then made decisions that horrified many. According to historian Diodorus, Alexander first conspired with his mother to have Philip's new wife, Cleopatra, and her newborn child killed. Attalus was in Asia Minor at the time, so Alexander sent execution orders to have him killed. Then, one by one, he eliminated all his political rivals. As news spread that a strong and dominant king like Philip was gone, replaced by his 20-year-old son, revolts erupted across the kingdom. Recently conquered states like Athens and Thebes believed they could regain independence. Ignoring his advisors, Alexander personally led an army of 3,000 soldiers to suppress these revolts. He first attacked Thebes, destroying the entire city. Fear of Alexander spread, and the revolts began to cool. Subsequently, wherever Alexander went, he was welcomed without opposition, establishing himself as a strong ruler.
But Alexander was not content with this. Aristotle's teachings had made him ambitious from childhood, and now that he was king, he wanted to rule the entire world. It was 332 BC. Alexander left Greece in the hands of his trusted military general Antipater and marched toward Persia with an army of 40,000 soldiers. Alexander believed the Persian kingdom was a gift from the gods for him. Alexander and his army first faced resistance in Persia at the Battle of the Granicus River. The river was a major obstacle. The Persian army, led by their military general Memnon of Rhodes, positioned their army, roughly half the size of Alexander's, around the river and waited. Alexander demonstrated his military excellence by using a wedge-shaped assault tactic. He led his army into the river and attacked the Persian center directly. According to some sources, Alexander himself fought in the battle, killing many Persian soldiers. One soldier attacked him with an axe, nearly killing him, but he survived. With his superior army, Alexander won the battle. About 4,000 Persian soldiers were killed, while Greek casualties were only around 50. The remaining Persian soldiers fled. Some captured soldiers, including former Greek soldiers, were declared traitors and executed. Alexander then captured the Lydian capital, Sardis, and reached the Ionian coast, where he was welcomed without opposition. He told the people they were now free from Persian rule and could live democratically. Next, he marched to Halicarnassus, a coastal fortress city and an important Persian naval base with massive walls. After losing at Granicus, Memnon of Rhodes had stationed his army here. Alexander besieged the fortress, built towers, ramps, and catapults, and began attacking. The Persians responded with nighttime raids, attempting to destroy Alexander's equipment, but with little success. According to modern historians like A.B. Bosworth, the siege lasted about 2 months. The Persians could no longer withstand the attacks, and on Memnon's orders, they set fire to the city and fled by sea. Alexander captured Halicarnassus and restored the original queen, Ada of Caria, who had been deposed, to her throne. In return, Ada adopted Alexander, indirectly giving him control over Halicarnassus. Marching forward, Alexander reached Phrygia, the capital of Gordium. According to Greek legends, Alexander was taken to a shrine where a chariot was tied with a rope in a very complex knot. He was told that whoever untied the knot would become the ruler of Asia. Upon hearing this, Alexander drew his sword and cut the rope with one swing. Alexander then marched south, where he would face a large army, that of Darius III, the sole ruler of the vast Persian Empire. The Battle of Issus ensued. Despite having a smaller army, Alexander's tactical skills and brave approach secured him victory. Darius fled, abandoning his entire kingdom. By 332 BC, Alexander had conquered Syria and Lebanon. His attention then turned to Tyre, an island in the Mediterranean. Surrounded by water and with high walls, it was difficult to conquer. First, Alexander besieged the island for 7 months. Then, in a brilliant move, he had his army build a causeway of stones across the water and invaded the island. According to historian Arrian of Nicomedia, after months of waiting, Alexander was so enraged that he massacred 8,000 people upon entering.
Alexander then marched toward Egypt, and along the way all kingdoms surrendered except one, Gaza, located on a hill. Climbing and entering the city was extremely difficult, but Alexander was determined. His army attempted to enter the city 3 times, but failed. Finally, on the 4th attempt, they succeeded. Many of Alexander's soldiers were killed, and Alexander himself suffered a severe shoulder injury. Upon reaching Egypt, the people welcomed him as the Son of God and Liberator, treating him as their pharaoh. Here he founded the city of Alexandria, which would later become a major trading center. After Egypt, Alexander headed for Babylon, the Persian capital, where King Darius had taken refuge after his defeat. Alexander still had 47,000 soldiers, though some historians believe Darius had an army of 1 million in Babylon. In 331 BC, the 2 armies met at Gaugamela. Darius placed chariots and elephants at the front to crush Alexander's army. In response, Alexander positioned his troops to target the chariots effectively. Darius himself was in a chariot, but fell during the battle. He then mounted a horse and fled again, causing his soldiers to flee as well. Alexander emerged victorious once more. Alexander then captured other cities like Susa and Persepolis, looting everything. He decided to find and kill Darius to prevent any future plots. However, before he could, Darius was killed by one of his own men, Bessus, who then took his place. Alexander pursued Bessus further into Asia, founding several cities along the way. Eventually, Bessus was betrayed by his own generals and handed over to Alexander, who had him executed. During this campaign, in 327 BC, Alexander captured Bactria. To form strong alliances, he married Roxana, the daughter of a local ruler, Oxyartes. Now, Alexander set his sights on India. He first sent delegates demanding surrender. Some smaller kingdoms surrendered, while those who refused faced the violent brutality of Alexander's army. Their villages and cities were burned. Alexander then faced his most challenging opponent, King Porus of the Pauravas kingdom in the Punjab region. The Battle of the Hydaspes ensued. According to Arrian of Nicomedia in his book Anabasis, Alexander won the battle and captured Porus. However, Alexander was so impressed with Porus's military tactics and bravery that he offered him co-rulership. A deal was struck. Alexander would be the new king of Pauravas, but Porus would rule under him. By now, Alexander had conquered more territory than any ruler in history, yet his ambition remained unquenched. He wanted to march deeper into India, but his army, exhausted from continuous battles, refused. Mutinies erupted. One of Alexander's generals told him that the soldiers longed to see their families, children, and homeland. Sympathizing with them, Alexander decided to return. However, true to his nature, Alexander continued capturing small villages on his way back. Upon returning to Persia, Alexander was welcomed as the King of Kings. He grew fond of Persian customs and began adopting Persian habits and dressing styles, which his generals found strange. Before leaving, Alexander executed some of his earlier appointed generals involved in corruption and injustice in the conquered regions. In 324 BC, Alexander reached Susa in Persia. To strengthen relations with Persia, he arranged mass marriages between his generals and Persian noblewomen. He himself married two royal Persian women, Statera and Parasates. Although Alexander had 3 wives, some historians like Robin Lane Fox and Paul Cartledge suggest he also had relations with men, particularly his closest friend, Hephaestion. Alexander then reached Babylon and decided to stay for a while, planning to conquer Arabia. During this time, he often partied and drank heavily. On the night of June 1, 323 BC, Alexander returned to his room drunk from a party and fell asleep. Suddenly, he developed a high fever and his condition worsened. According to historian Arrian, over the next 12 days, Alexander's health continued to decline. Every effort was made to save him, but no medicine worked. Finally, at just 32 years old, Alexander breathed his last. Some sources claim he may have been poisoned. The death of the world's greatest king left the entire empire in shock. People couldn't believe such a strong and brave king had died so young. Alexander was buried in Alexandria. Over the centuries, his name became a synonym for bravery, and many emperors traveled from afar to pay tribute at his tomb. It is said that even the Roman Emperor Augustus came to see his body. Today, the location of Alexander's tomb remains one of the world's great mysteries. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Creating such videos requires a lot of effort and time, so your support is crucial for our motivation. Before you leave, please comment below which historical period you'd like to see next. See you soon with another history documentary.